I want to get your take on how this begins.
Sure.
What are you looking to cut right from the beginning?
So first is we want to go right in through executive action to do the failures of the executive branch that need to be addressed. Because the dirty little secret right now, Maria, is the people we elect to run the government, they're not the ones who actually run the government. It's the unelected bureaucrats in the administrative state. That was created through executive action. It's going to be fixed through executive action. Think about the Supreme Court's environment over the last several years. They've held that many of those regulations are unconstitutional at a large scale. Rescind those regulations, pull those regs back, and then that gives us the industrial logic to then downsize the size of that administrative state. And the beauty of all of this is that can be achieved just through executive action without Congress. Score some early wins, and then you look at those bigger portions of the federal budget that need to be addressed one by one. So I think that's one way to think about this is how can the president of the United States, who's been elected with a historic mandate, actually do the thing that the voters have voted for. They haven't voted for incremental change here this time, Maria. We have voted for sweeping change, and the voters actually deserve to get it. And we're focused on how to do that as early and as quickly as possible.
So President-elect Trump just said on that soundbite that you're going to make recommendations. So you're going to make recommendations in terms of where to cut after all that you've just said. Then what?
Look, we're not going to be cutting ribbons. We're going to be cutting costs. And so those recommendations are going to be on a real-time basis. But I do want to take a big step back and understand, for people to understand the scope of this problem. Over $500 billion that's spent every year right now was not even authorized by Congress in the first place. The Pentagon has just failed its seventh consecutive audit, nearly $1 trillion of budget. They can't even tell you where it goes. So I think part of this is exposing for the public the extent of that rot and waste, but then to take steps first through executive action and then laying the groundwork for broader change through legislation as well to rein in that deficit, to rein in that budget. And more crucially, Maria, I know we're talking about this in terms of efficiency, but there's something deeper going on here. This is about restoring self-governance and accountability in America as well.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies, like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.
Who is running the country? Well, it's certainly not the president or vice president in name, right? You give people a title. So the dirtiest secret in American politics, I said it before, I'll say it again, is that the people we elect to run the government, they're not the ones who actually run the government. It is a machine. It is a Leviathan. Somebody brought up Hobbes earlier. It is a machine that's bigger than the sum of any individual part. It's like a bad, nightmarish version of the San Antonio Spurs, okay? It doesn't matter who Greg Pop puts in. The machine still runs. And so it's this amalgam of special interests on the outside working with unelected bureaucrats who were never elected to their positions and, according to traditional views of government, can't even be fired by the people who were actually elected to run the government. And so I think the way to fix this is who's running the country? It is that machine that's running the country. We're not up against a candidate. We're running against that machine. And it makes sense because it's not an accident that, there's so many smart people in this country. Even amongst the Democrats, I'll admit, there's smart people who are Democrats. But then you get a guy with cognitive deficits at the level that Joe Biden has it. How could that be? Those cognitive deficits are not a bug. They are a feature for the people who actually control him. So that's why after Joe Biden, you get Kamala Harris, who has certain deficits, we could say, of her own. So policy deficits at the very least. Policy deficits. We'll leave it at that. And I think that's not a bug. It's a feature if you have policy deficits because it is another license for the people who control those puppets, those candidates. And so it's not an accident. So I think that we got to keep that mission in mind. We're not going in to just incrementally reform that machine around the edges and massage it. That's a mistake that conservatives, I think, have made, a trap we've fallen into over the last 40 years. We want to reform the FBI, fire Christopher Wray or whatever, so James Comey 2.0 can sit right there in the same seat. We make the mistake of believing this is about individual action. want to get serious, we want to go in and dismantle that machine. Fire 75% of the federal bureaucrats, shut down agencies that should no longer exist, rescind every regulation that was never passed through Congress, that was unconstitutional in the first place. Get in there and shut the thing down, and you're always taking some risk, right? I mean, one risk is that you go in there, you don't break enough, you don't cut enough. You cut off one head of an 8-headed hydra, it grows right back. The other risk is not, I'm not going to tell you the alternative is that I know exactly the perfect amount to cut and we're going to get it exactly right, because that would be a lie. You can't know that in advance. The other risk is that you cut so much that you cut not just fat, but you also cut some muscle. It's a risk. It's just a question of which risk are you willing to take. I'll take the second risk over the first every time, and I think that's how we're going to save our country.
There you go.
Part of what's holding back energy dominance in this country is that administrative state. Look at the regulations coming out of the Department of Interior, the slow permitting requirements, how hard it is to open a new refinery. So I think that is the root cause of our failure as a country, is this unelected fourth branch of government. And I think they look at elected officials as these cute little puppets that come and go every little while. Not anymore. There's a new sheriff in town. Donald Trump's the president. He has mandated us for radical, drastic reform of this federal bureaucracy with the learnings of that first term. And you look, Elon and I mean, Elon's solving major problems of physics. I came from the world of biology. What we're solving here now is not a natural problem. This is a man-made problem. And when you have a man-made problem, you better darn well have a man-made solution. That's what we're bringing to the table. We're assembling the brightest minds in the country. This is the equivalent of a modern Manhattan Project to take on, I think, the major problem holding our country back. It's the federal bureaucracy. Target that cost, save the money, restore self-governance. And Sean, I think we did something pretty novel here, if I may say so. If I just want to say is this Department of Government Efficiency, it is built with an end date. We want to be done by July 4th, 2026. So for the first time in history, creating a department, creating a new government project that is designed to end when its work is complete. That's on the 250th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence, and that's the gift we want to give this country on that birthday.
Last Tuesday was not the destination, it was the start line for the revival of this country. The cabinet picks this week, you know what, Donald Trump wasn't afraid in putting Tom Homan and Kristi Noem in charge of the mass deportations of millions of illegals for this country. But I also want to thank him for making sure that Elon Musk and I are in a position to start the mass deportations of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of the D.C. bureaucracy. That, too, is how we're going to save this country. And I don't know if you've got to know Elon yet, but he doesn't bring a chisel. He brings a chainsaw, and we're going to be taking it to that bureaucracy. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I do want to say this, is that we've been taught to believe over the last 4 years that we have become a nation in decline, that we're at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. All we have is to fight over the scraps of some shrinking pie. I don't think we have to stay that nation in decline. I think with what happened last week, we're back to being a nation in our ascent, a nation whose best days are actually still ahead of us.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you last year that it was morning in America. It's not. It's not yet, but on January 20th, it is going to be morning in America, the start of a new dawn, the start of a country where our kids are going to grow up and we're going to tell them and mean it that you get ahead in the United States again with your own hard work and commitment and dedication, that you're free to speak your mind at every step of the way, that the best person gets the job regardless of their skin color. I think most of us agree on it. The next 4 years, it's just the beginning. It's not the end of the chapter, it's the beginning. And I think the work that's going on here at AFBI sets the course not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 250. And so what I will say is when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House on January 20th, that is just the beginning of our best days as a nation, still yet ahead of us. Thank you all for supporting the mission here. Thank you all for your love of this country. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. And 4 years from now, we're going to say not make America great again, but keep making America greater. Thank you all. God bless you and your families. Let's enjoy the celebration, and may our best days be ahead. Thank you.